Welcome to the Maura Sweeney Podcast. Maura is an international speaker and the trademark ambassador of happiness with a passion for personal responsibility. She weaves insightful questions with personal stories to challenge your mindsets and empower your best and happiest self from the inside out. Here's Maura with today's podcast for you.
Are you afraid? Well, if you're on a path to living happy from the inside out, today's podcast is for you. Fear. Are you afraid? Well, if you're a member of the human race, and like the rest of us, there have probably been some places in your life where you have felt fear, where you've experienced fear, because it is common to the human experience. And yet, something about fear we find ends up paralyzing us at a number of levels. Sometimes it's emotionally, sometimes it's psychologically in our head, and other times it's actually physically, where our body won't do something and won't go somewhere because we are gripped by fear. You've probably heard the old adage that fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing as real, F-E-A-R. Well, here's the thing about fear. We not only think about it, but we internalize it. It becomes part of our emotional makeup, and it really can put us in a jail cell if we allow it to, and it could become so big in our lives. And because this is a podcast all about living happy from the inside out, I want to conquer a little bit of fear today with you on this podcast. I found that, at least for the purposes of this podcast, I want to cover 3 different ways or places that fear can come to grip us. One would be in our family of origin, the place we grow up. When we are in our formative years and we're around the same environment, the same words, the same people, and the same behaviors, we can actually acquire fears that maybe wouldn't be ours to have in the first place. I can give you an example that comes to mind for me. For a number of years, we lived with my grandmother. And my grandmother, although she was a very smart and modern woman, she grew up in a family that had a lot of fears about superstitions. And it seemed like it was out of order for her. But I'm telling you, she would get so nervous about various things that she was convinced would work poorly if she followed them or if she fell under them. So she was extremely superstitious. And I wonder, had she grown up in a different environment, would she have carried those emotional feelings with her? And the answer is probably no, she wouldn't have. The second thing I remember about my grandmother is that she had a fear of child abductions. And I could remember one day coming home from school 10 or 15 minutes late. Now, back in the day, everybody walked to and from school. Our school was 3 houses and across the street away. It was in our neighborhood. And because I was 10 or 15 minutes late, I came home and I saw my grandmother standing in the driveway, tears in her eyes, her hands on her hips. And she said to me, "Where were you?" She said, "You had me a wreck. I just called the police department. I thought somebody stole you." That fear I could think about today. I thought it was misplaced as a child, but I could see and understand even today how that fear of a child or someone being abducted was so real to her. And again, you can see how it becomes so paralyzing. So all of us can suffer some form of fear that we acquire from our families or a family of origin. Here's the second place I think fear comes from. It could come from personal experience. We did something, we had a bad experience, and we want to avoid it even years later. Even when that original experience today would seem nominal or even make no sense. I want to give you 2 that come to mind about experiences. When I was a preschooler, my grandparents used to take me and my brother out on pony rides. Well, we loved pony rides. And I could remember on one occasion, I remember saying, "Oh, let the horse go faster, let the horse go faster." Well, the horse went faster. I fell off. And I remember being shocked. And also I was a little bit bruised. But even as this little child, 4 or 5 years old, I remember thinking to myself, okay, I need to get back on this pony, because if I don't, I'm always going to be afraid of ponies. And that was what I asked. I said, put me back on the horse again. But I remember saying, don't let the horse go as fast. And so it was my small way as a child of trying to ward off a fear that maybe I felt from experience would have stayed with me. And I wanted to get on the other side of it. But here's a story I heard just recently, and hopefully you too could relate to it. I have a friend my age who lives here in Florida, but she also grew up in New Jersey. And she happened to share a story with me just last week. I didn't even know this about her, but she, as bright and as, she could do just about anything, but she had a bad experience as a 5-year-old at the New Jersey shore when she got caught in an undertow in the ocean. And it frightened her so badly. I had that happen to me once before. You'd have to be there to experience it yourself, or maybe not, but you get caught in a circle. And when you're trying to breathe and you're in a circle and being spun around, you can't tell where up and where down is. She couldn't find the bottom of the ocean. And she said it was her brother that ultimately came in to rescue her. Now, here she is my age. And she said to me, Maura, I have been afraid of the water where I either have to put my head under or I can't touch the ground. She said, that's been with me all my life. So here's a woman that doesn't even appear to be afraid. But the end of the story I thought was great. She happened to share how earlier this summer she and her husband took a trip to Hawaii. And she said to her husband, while I'm here, there's something I need to do. She said, I feel like I'm going to look ridiculous because I'm going to make sure I have sufficient support on me to keep me afloat. But she said, I want to learn how to snorkel. She said, I have to do it in deep water where I can't even find the bottom, and I have to be able to put my head under. And she said, Maura, I did look ridiculous because I was loaded with all kinds of flotation devices. But she said, I did it. Now, I understood exactly what she was saying. I gave her a high five, and I said to her, wow. And I said, tell me something. What was it like when you went on this snorkeling expedition? She said, Maura, first of all, she said, I felt very empowered. But she said, beyond that, because I went snorkeling in deep water, she said, I got to see unbelievable marine life. The color, she said, it was gorgeous. And she was able to smile. And she personally felt empowered for having overcome by even one step a fear of an experience from when she too was a child. I want to give you one third place that I believe fear comes from. Now, I'm sure there are others, but this is a common one. Fear comes from our ego. There's something in our ego that doesn't want to look foolish. And because of that ego, we are held in check. We don't step out and do the things we want to. We don't ask the questions we want to ask. We don't try those things we really want to do that our soul or something else inside of us is saying, yes, I want to do that. But because we're afraid of looking foolish or of losing face, we don't go there. And the last story I want to tell you is something that I ended up writing about in a book. I called it Exiting the Comfort Zone. And it was my story of doing something I always wanted to do for years and decades, and that was learn how to dance. But my training and my life experience and even my ego told me two things. Number one, I was too old. And number two, that I did not have any physical ability or grace to learn how to dance. I ended up totally losing my ego, totally losing, feeling ridiculous, having people laugh at me, fail courses at a local college. But I kept at it over and over and over again because I knew that if I could learn how to dance, that I would feel so much freer and so much more graceful and happier. And yet I needed to break through all of the incarceration my own ego had me in to get there. It took me a long time, but I broke through, and it ended up helping me to write or launch my first book. So what about you? Are you afraid? And are you going to allow your fears to keep you from doing and being that happy, peaceful, expansive and free person you really want to be. You know, I had forgotten about this, but about a year ago, my story was featured in an article from New York City's Well Summit. It must be a summit they do once a year for women. And my story was of conquering fear and actually using fear as a catalyst was one of the featured articles they wrote for that summit. I want you to be thinking about what your fear is. And then I want you to be thinking about how you can conquer it and how you could actually use that very fear as a catalyzing influence to get you beyond it. In that article, I think they had asked me a question about, well, how exactly do you conquer fear? And my response was the old adage that said, how do you eat an elephant? Maybe it was a joke. And the answer was one bite at a time. One small bite at a time, one small step at a time, one small move at a time. So what is it with you? Do you need to get out and exercise and you're afraid that you can't? Are you looking to lose weight and think it's too big and too intimidating a force for you? Are you someone who's afraid of even opening up your mouth and providing your opinion on something? Well, what too can you do? You can start overcoming that fear one step at a time, one decision at a time, one move at a time. And I would say when you get to the end of the line, you will find that that fear is somewhere in your rearview window, and what you're looking at is a happier, freer, and more peaceful you. So that's been my thought for you today. I hope you like the podcast. I hope you subscribe. Give me a good review and share it with other people who are also looking for quick pick-me-ups and opportunities to self-empower on their way to happiness from the inside out too. Until the next time, this has been Maura with Maura for You.
For more insights on living happy from the inside out, subscribe to this podcast. To learn more about Maura, visit her MauraForYou.com website, where you'll find videos, blogs, books, and the Foundations of Happiness self-study e-course. Maura, 4, letter U.com, where Maura is always for you.